Hey guys, how's it going? It's Baggins here, and today I wanted to answer a pretty frequently asked question, and that is light, medium, or heavy armor for healing. Which is the best? Is there a best? And the quick answer is no, I don't think there is a best, and honestly, all of them are viable in a bunch of different scenarios. And today we're going to show you guys 3 different builds: a light armor healing build, a medium armor healing build, or a medium load, and a heavy armor healing build as well. And we're going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of all of them, what the stats look like, and certain perks that you would need to make them work. So first things first, obviously with every single build we are going to have a life staff, and my life staff of choice for this is basically Will of the Ancients. It's a 29 focus, 599 gear score, blessed refreshing move life staff. Ideally this would be 600 gear score, and the third perk would be refreshing, which is basically just Will of the Ancients, or keenly fortified. Honestly, any other third perk would be great. Just blessed and refreshing move is really what we want to see as the first 2 perks. In terms of jewelry that I'm going to be using for all 3 builds as well includes this amulet here. It has both divine and health on. With the light build, we could look to swap this out for something a little bit more aggressive, as the whole concept, which we'll get into in a bit with the light armor build, is that you're not really looking to take too much damage in the first place, but still having a bigger health pool and being able to heal yourself for more is going to be good when you are, getting focused as a healer in almost every scenario, any PvP scenario, and a lot of PvE as well if the tank loses threat. Ring-wise, I am going to be using this ring for every single build as well, and this is a major investment, I think, if you are a healer, and especially if you're looking to do either the light or heavy builds. Getting a hearty sacred ring is very important, and we'll talk more about that when we get into the subsequent builds. And then the earring that I'm going to be using for every single build as well is this one here. I think this is a really, really good earring. I'm very proud of it. It's a healthy toast, refreshing earring. Maybe, again, there could be some argument that you don't particularly need this in a light armor healing build, as you don't need to be doing too much self-healing. You're supposed to just be staying out of the fight and staying safe by just like dodging away all the time. But still, really great set of perks there, and we'll talk more about how they interact with each build as we get into the video. One other thing that I do want to say is with every single build we use Sacred Ground, the ability on the life staff, obviously you guys may be familiar with. Very, very good ability, very, very strong, increases the healing of everything else by 50%, so just a 50% increase to all your heals. And then on top of that, it has probably one of the best perks for the life staff in the game, and that is the Fortifying Sacred Ground, which is on my chest piece. There we go. Fortifying Sacred Ground. Allies healed by Sacred Ground gain Fortify, increasing damage absorption by 9.3% for 5 seconds. So this perk you're going to see everywhere. I highly recommend that if you are getting into healing in New World, or you're looking to improve your healing ability and you haven't already got this perk, you have to get this on a piece of armor. You could even get it on your life staff if you really want to, but having it on a piece of armor and saving perks on the life staff that are specific to weapons is a good idea. So that's a basis. That's something that's going to be consistent across all the builds. Now let's get into the first build, which is the light load, or the light armor healing build. This gives us access to the dodge roll by being under the light load, which is pretty nice. That can get you out of gravity wells in PvP scenarios. That can get you out of a lot of different boss mechanics, make you a lot more mobile, and it also gives you a decent boost to your increase in healing. However, it is a bit of a misleading boost, as it says you get 30% bonus healing, but that 30% bonus healing is sort of diminished and squished down by a lot of other bonus healing you receive, like having Blessed on your life staff. That is a healing bonus that squishes down the light armor bonus. If you do Bend Light, which I think you probably should do in almost every single I didn't have my life staff out there. If you have Bend Light, here we go. So your healing is increased by 20%. That's a perk that you can get from the life staff, obviously, just over here. That also reduces the healing of light armor. So one of the things that I think is important is we're not using the light armor build to increase our healing from this actual passive here. There are other ways that we are able to get more healing from the light load, and I think this is, if you want to just do the biggest possible heals, this is the best build to go for. However, thinking that bonus is important, it isn't really. The biggest thing that you get from the light load is the dodge roll, which is pretty huge in a lot of different scenarios, as we previously mentioned. Now, the core of this build obviously involves a medium chest piece, light helmet, light gloves, light legs, light boots. I think there are a bunch of different combinations that you can put together to get at this like 12.7 threshold. You basically want to be as close as you can to breaking into medium without actually breaking into medium, and therefore you will get the highest amount of armor armor rating, which right now with this build I'm sitting at 822 physical, 616 elemental. Honestly, if I could redo this, it would probably be better to skew it more towards the elemental side, as we shouldn't really be taking too much physical damage, as a lot of physical damage comes from great axes and warhammers and, you know, melee weapons, and melee weapons shouldn't be able to get close to us because we pair the life staff with the rapier with this particular build. So the rapier serves as a purpose not for damage, but to further increase our movement with this build. So, you know, we are dodging, and then we're using evade, and then we're dodging, and we're using flesh, and then if they're still stuck next to us somehow, we're using riposte, stunning them, which then lowers the cooldowns if we land a successful stun, and then we can evade again, and we can dodge, and we can just keep going, keep moving, and it's very, very frustrating for a melee user to try and stay on you as a result, and you're able to just constantly skirt around the backlines. If you want to see a full video of this build in action, I'll put a link to a Facebook video actually in the description down below, where I've been using the light armor rapier life staff build. Now, in terms of stats for this build, and in terms of stats for all builds actually, I do just go ahead and dump everything into focus. So if we go back here to give my full amount of points available, something that I do across all my builds is I just go all out in focus, and then if I'm gonna get constitution, I just get it from my armor instead. So obviously this build runs an insane amount of focus, a ridiculous amount. Something that you could do to keep yourself just a little bit safe though is get some of that 40 constitution food. I believe it's called roasted rabbit with vegetables or something like that. I've probably got some lying around somewhere, but yeah, you can pop some of that food. That'll give you 40 extra constitution, and then you'll be at 100 con, which gives you this nice little health boost here. You get health based on your physical armor, and that should probably put me pretty close to 10k. I'm not actually sure, but again, the whole idea with this build is that you're not looking to get hit in the first place. You're constantly just sliding around, dodging, and then when you get an opportunity, you are throwing out a heal, you're throwing out a heal, you're dodging, you're throwing out more heals. And one thing that enables you to dodge so frequently with this build, and why I say that this ring is a very important investment, as I mentioned at the start of the video, is because Hearty gives you an increased stamina pool. So normally you would have 100 stamina without the Hearty ring. So if we just go ahead and take it off here, we have 100 stamina. We can do 2 dodges, and then we're out of stamina. 2 dodges back to back. But of course, if we go ahead and put on the ring, and now we can go ahead and do 1, 2, 3 dodges back to back. Now, obviously, you can just pace yourself with a bit of stamina management, but sometimes in a pinch, you really just want to do 3 dodges back to back, and having that Hearty ring just really enables that. Also, one thing that I would recommend you do with your gear, if you are going to go for a light armor rapier build, is run refreshing evasion on as many pieces as you can. So it says it reduces active cooldowns by basically 1% after exiting the dodge animation, and I believe this does stack across multiple different pieces of gear. So every time we're dodging, we're getting like 1, 2, 3, don't have it on this piece yet, 4 from the boots. So we're getting like 4% refreshing evasion. I think you can also get it on like a earring potentially, or amulet, or a citation needed there. So if you really, really wanted to lean into this build and just invest all of your gold, getting refreshing evasion on as many pieces as possible, and just constantly dodging to lower your cooldowns, I believe is the play. And we have such a ridiculous amount of focus because there's actually, technically there is diminishing returns on going over 300 points in a stat, but not necessarily with focus, because you kind of get to double dip on the amount that focus gives you back in return. And if you want more information on that, there's a really good video made by Moralin, who does some amazing deep dives on YouTube, and I highly recommend you go check them out if you're interested. Some of the way that the maths is calculated in the game is a bit strange, but dipping lots of points into focus does actually end up being pretty good as a result. Other aspects of the build that you guys are probably curious about obviously includes the weapon mastery, and I would recommend that you do something a little bit like this for the weapon mastery when it comes to the life staff. So we're going to take all of the perks that we want over here. We're going to take Orb of Protection instead of Light's Embrace, and we're also going to go take Beacon over here as well. Now, 2 perks that I recommend you always pick up on the protector side of the tree, regardless of like anything that you're doing, any build that you're doing, is always take Bend Light. After you dodge, your heals are 20% more effective. It's just a really free way to get like blessed, basically. Blessed obviously gives you a 20% increase in healing on your life staff. So I mean, by blessed, I mean like this perk here, 20% healing bonus. So just every time you dodge, you get another instance of blessed. That's just like a given. And then this buff here as well, to my understanding, it's actually not 10%, it's 20%. So it's actually twice as strong as it says it should be. Now, maybe at some point this will be fixed. Whether the tooltip is wrong or the actual ability is wrong, I suspect it is the actual way it's coded. It's supposed to be 10%, but instead it's giving you 20, but it's pretty good. So protective strength is a given all the time. Now, something that's a bit of a stinker here is because I believe you always want to take these set of abilities with Beacon. You can't like not take the 5 seconds longer. That's just really good. You can't not take Aegis because it increases the AoE, and you can't not take Protective Strength or Bend Light. You're just not left with enough points to get to Divine Blessing on this side of the tree. So it's a little bit awkward the way this pans out, but we just decide to not get Divine Blessing as a result. I don't believe Mending Touch or Enchanted Justice are actually really that good, so you're kind of free to take one more point over here. We could go for Glowing Focus if you want your Orb of Protection to last a little bit longer. Speed of Light if you want to give some movement speed to everybody. Protector's Touch if you just want a little bit of self-survivability, or even Balance if you just want it to be like a little bit more slippery, but I don't think that is a good idea. So for me, I am going to choose Speed of Light in this particular instance, just so we can like move around a bit faster and, you know, again, really lean into the speedy side of the build. And one other thing that I like to do with this build is just go ahead and take off targeted healing, because we don't need to really target any of our heals. We're just sort of going to be placing them into the mix. So if there's a fight going on over here, we got it covered. There's a fight going over there, we got it covered. We don't need to be targeting people with our Sacred Ground. We just want to plop them down where we think the action is. And then again, just constantly keep dodging, moving, dodging, moving, dodging, and just lowering the cooldowns and just like making it really hard. So we're not staying in one place. We're not getting like focused by any muskets or bows because we're always on the move. When our abilities are like coming off of cooldown, we cast them, and then we go ahead and we just start moving around again, get into a better position, move to somewhere new until the heals come off of cooldown, and then we throw out the heals again. And that is basically the light armor healing build. I don't think there's any particular perks that you need outside of Fortifying Sacred Ground. When Mending Protection, which I'll put an image on the screen here, when this perk actually works in the game, it's definitely worth getting on a piece of gear, and fingers crossed they're going to be fixing that for the patch next week. But until that works, I think it's just Fortifying Sacred Ground is what you need. You could get Revitalizing Beacon as it does increase your self-healing. But again, the idea is that you hopefully don't need to heal yourself too much because the enemies shouldn't be able to attack you because you're just constantly moving all the time. All right, now we could talk about gems and gear, but I don't want this to be just like a 30-minute long video. So we're going to move on to the next build now, which is a medium armor build. And this is my standard healing build. So with the previous build that we talked about with the light armor, I do think that is a build that you should specifically use in PvP scenarios, as in PvE, especially in the more challenging PvE, like the dungeon mutators we got coming up. It's too likely that you get one-shot by like random boss mechanics and stuff. It just turns out that there's a lot more sort of like sometimes unavoidable damage in expeditions and stuff, whereas you have like more space when you're in Outpost Rush and when you're doing wars that you can just kind of skirt around the damage to some extent. So I don't recommend using light armor in PvE, but for this build, this does work in both PvE and PvP, and this is what you're going to see me using most of the time. In fact, we do have a dedicated video to it up in the top right, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but we are now rocking a heavy helmet, a heavy chest, medium gloves, light legs, and medium boots. And in terms of weapon choice, we've gone for the Void Gauntlet and, of course, the Life Staff. Now, the Void Gauntlet, in my opinion, is the ultimate support weapon, as it provides a bunch of different things that you really want as a healer in the game. It has a way to consistently give you mana, so if we just go ahead and burn a bunch of mana here, and then we decide we want to get it back, we can press right mouse button and we can turn health into mana just on demand. And then if we need health back, obviously we have access to that as well. So yeah, the constant ability to refresh your mana without needing mana potions or anything else, very nice from the Void Gauntlet. And then the Void Gauntlet also presents a lot of utility for your team as well. We've got ways to buff our team's damage with Oblivion. It's a very, very strong ability. It can also reduce the enemy's damage with Withering Oblivion. We can buff our own damage and reduce the enemy's damage with Baleful Tether. We can root enemies in place and reduce their healing with certain perks on Petrifying Scream. Orb of Decay is another way to provide healing, and again, more slows. Essence Rupture is another way to provide more healing, and also with Void Collar, that's another way to provide more healing. So basically, the only other weapon that really kind of adds healing to your build, there's maybe like a few things you could do with Ice Gauntlet to get some mana back and stuff, but this is basically the only other healer weapon in the game right now. So Void Gauntlet, if you're looking to play like a pure support, a very nice spot to be. And if you are just like basically new to healing, I would recommend going for this medium armor build and pairing the Void Gauntlet with the Life Staff. Now, in terms of stats for this build, we're now rocking a bit more Constitution. Again, we still have all of our points dumped into Focus, but we're getting quite a bit more Constitution from our armor. So these medium boots are all con, these gloves are full Constitution, and this helmet is Constitution as well. And of course, with all our jewelry having Constitution on, it's a little bit awkward with this Void Gauntlet that we got here. It does have Intelligence on. This is something that I'm going to be replacing replacing in the next patch, because we'll actually be able to force Blessed onto a crafted Void Gauntlet, whereas right now, this is basically the only consistent Void Gauntlet you can get with Blessed on, so we just sort of suck up the fact that it has intelligence on it. In terms of the life staff abilities, I have opted to go for this now. We do take Divine Blessing, and we don't take Orb of Protection anymore. I really like Light's Embrace as a single target heal for topping up tanks. Again, this is a build that I use in expeditions pretty much all the time. Beacon, I just like to keep it there because I think Beacon is also a really good healer, and as we've mentioned before, Sacred Ground is just like a done deal all the time. So no Orb of Protection for this one, and as a result of us running Light's Embrace, we do need to turn targeted healing back on, which is just here, and then turning group mode on and off. I would turn it off if you're in Outpost Rush, but in most other scenarios, you probably want it on, especially in expeditions. You know, you would just want to heal people in your group, so keep group mode on. Otherwise, it makes it much more difficult to cycle through targets. But yeah, targeted healing on, group mode on for this build. And then in terms of the weapon mastery for the Void Gauntlet, there is a bunch of different ways that you can do this, and this is going to dictate which perks you need to pick up for the Void Gauntlet. So for PvE, if you're just doing some dungeons, I think you always want to get Oblivion over here. And it kind of depends on your playstyle. If you want to get in the fray and do a bit more damage yourself, you can take the Void Blade, and then you take the maxed out Oblivion, and then you have a little bit of a choice over here as to whether you want to go Orb of Decay, or if you want to go ahead and take Essence Rupture instead. So Essence Rupture is another heal that you can, or a debuff that you can put on the enemy that allows your team to get some healing. So if you want like a little bit something more of a passive playstyle, I'd recommend that you go for something like this. You know, we take these abilities here, and then the other passives that sort of, you know, appeal to you. Generally, I think it's a good idea to take like Efficient Harvest, Mending Evasion, and also Radiant Efficiency. If you can, it is like a good idea to try and get to Void Caller, but it's not like super needed with this build. However, as I mentioned, if you do want to be more in the enemy's face, again, in expeditions and stuff, you can instead opt to go for the Void Blade instead. This is going to be a much more consistent way for you to build stacks in order to get the Void Caller passives. So I'll show you guys my PvE and PvP build, but I just wanted to make you aware that like the sort of abilities that I typically look to take: Void Blade, Oblivion, Orb of Decay, and Essence Rupture for PvE, and then in PvP, I actually opt to go for something like this instead. So there we go, those are the PvP abilities of choice. I think in a PvP scenario, you can never not take Petrifying Scream and Oblivion. They are just so monstrously powerful, and that is because of a particular set of perks, which I will now go ahead and show you. So on the armor, perks for this build, we have Revitalizing Beacon. I'll talk about that in a second. On my chest piece, I have Nullifying Oblivion, which is a very powerful addition to the ability. It says on activation, Oblivion removes limited duration buffs from enemies within its radius, so we can go ahead and, you know, we imagine we're fighting on the point here in a war scenario, and the tanks have got lots of heals that they can stand in over here, so these are all limited duration buffs, and what we could do is just go ahead and drop the Oblivion on them, and that would strip away all of the limited duration buffs, including tanks that are standing in Sacred Ground. It actually, like, straight up removes that, which is really, really powerful. Another really powerful perk that you want to make sure you get if you do want to run this build in PvP is Putrefying Scream. It says on successful hit, Petrifying Scream inflicts disease, reducing target's healing by 28%. This is, if I'm not mistaken, the single most powerful anti-healing ability in the game. So you can hit somebody with a Scream, it reduces their healing by almost 30%, or that reduces the amount of incoming healing they receive, and also if they're below 50% in terms of HP, then it also roots them for 3 seconds. So they're standing still for 3 seconds, receiving 30% less healing. Because they're standing still, they're probably going to be in like an ice storm, or they're going to be inside your Oblivion with you stripping away their buffs. Very, very strong combo. And then the third piece of gear or perk that you want to look to get, it's not super important, but it is Diminishing Orb. So it says, on hit, Orb of Decay reduces duration of target's buffs by 50%. So you can just roll an orb through a bunch of enemies like this, and when it goes through them, it reduces the duration of their buffs, basically. So if they had you know, a healing buff on them, like this 15 seconds here that I get from Revitalizing Beacon, reduces that in half, so cuts it down, and you can just keep doing that constantly in the fight, and it will actually have like not a massive impact, not as huge as Oblivion or Scream, but it will have an impact on the battle for sure. So definitely worth, like, not You don't have to go for it, but it is something that is nice to pick up on a piece of gear. We've got Fortifying Sacred Ground on the gloves for this particular build. Fortifying Sacred Ground, as we mentioned, it's just really good. Fortifying Sacred Ground, as we mentioned, it's just a really good perk. It turns Sacred Ground into Orb of Protection, or just adds the Orb of Protection Fortify on top of it, so there's no reason to not get it. We've stated this multiple times during the video now, but it's a good one. And then on the helmet, we have Revitalizing Beacon. Now, this becomes more relevant in the medium armor build, because now you have enough of a health pool here that you could look to take some hits from the enemy, and indeed you are going to have to get up a little bit more close to the enemy in order to like land the Scream and be next to them to drop the Oblivion. So if you want to make that happen, medium armor as a minimum is something you would do. That's why we don't really do Void Gauntlet and light armor, because the abilities kind of encourage you to be up close to the enemy. And if you are going to be up close to the enemy, Revitalizing Beacon is a very nice perk to have. I'm going to demonstrate the strength of it with the heavy armor build, so you just keep watching the video to see that one. And actually, speaking of the heavy armor build, let's jump into that now, shall we? Okay, so here we are now in the heavy armor healing build. This build can be run with both the Void Gauntlet and the Warhammer. It depends sort of how aggro versus how defensive you want to be. If you just want to sort of stay alive and keep enemies off you and sort of play a much more turtle style of the previous build that we mentioned with light armor, Warhammer is really good for that, because you can drop stuns on enemies with Shockwave. You can Path of Destiny to stagger them as they're trying to run into your backline, and then you can also, if they're all like sort of gathered around you, hit them with a big clear out and knock them all away. In terms of stats for this build, again, we have put all of our points into focus, so we do still do some pretty big heals, but now with all of the constitution that I'm getting from my armor, and if I'm not mistaken, every single piece of armor now, apart from my gloves, which is, at least gloves are a little bit awkward. I could do with getting something better, but it's sort of, you know, this build has like been a recent development for me, or something that I've come back to. But yeah, everything else has Constitution on it, which puts us at the 150 Constitution mark. Now, if you really wanted to make this build super strong and really lean into the survivability style, you could take some points away from your focus, just sit at 250 focus instead, and get yourself to the 200 Constitution mark, so you get a 20% increase in armor, which doubles down on the increased max health by 10% of your physical armor. So this is like the heavily armored turtle or paladin build that you've seen in the past. It still is very strong. People seem to think that the paladin build or the heavy armor healer build was like nerfed to oblivion, but you can still do some really good heals and have really good survivability, especially if you're comparing it with the Warhammer. If you can find the repulsing clear out perk, which knocks people back, it really sends them flying and makes it very hard for like melee to stay on you, because you just really disorientate them. And then another perk that's pretty important to pick up for this one is Sundering Shockwave. It's not necessary, but in wars it will help out. When you drop the Shockwave, it applies Rend, which makes the enemy take almost 10% more damage for 10 seconds. Other notable perks I have on my armor here, we've got the Fortifying Sacred Ground again. As I've mentioned so many times in the video now, it's just a good perk. Just get Fortifying Sacred Ground. And then we've got the Revitalizing Beacon on the helmet, as we still had in our medium build. Now, Revitalizing Beacon, as I mentioned previously, is very strong, particularly in this build, because we are looking to be in the fray a lot. In heavy armor, we're not afraid to take damage, we're not afraid to be up in the enemy's face, but we are certainly expecting to take damage as a result of it. And if you're expecting to take damage, Revitalizing Beacon really comes in handy here. I can show you an example if we slap on the Void Gauntlet here of just how much it can do. So if we take some damage from the Void Gauntlet's right mouse button here, and then we swap to the Life Staff and drink a health potion, we're going to heal for 4,223. So not a bad heal. However, if we go ahead and take some more damage again, just get myself roughly to the same point as where I was before. All right, there we go. So now we're going to go ahead and cast Beacon on the wall to proc the Revitalizing Beacon. It says using Beacon increases healing power. So there it is. We don't need to cast it on ourselves, just using Beacon. There's the healing power there. So we went from 4,223 to now 5,268. So yeah, that's more than 1,000 healing extra on a health potion just by casting Revitalizing Beacon somewhere randomly. And obviously, if you cast it on yourself, that's going to be really good, because then you're getting the healing from Revitalizing Beacon, and you're also increasing the healing from your potion as well. Another piece of tech that I really like for this heavily armored healing build is the Healthy Toast on the earring. It says when you drink a mana potion, gain 9.4% of your max health. Now, obviously, your max health is like, this is when you have the most amount of health in this build, because you're heavily armored, you've got more points into Constitution. A lot of your Constitution things increase the amount of armor or the amount of health you have, so yeah, you've just got a big health pool to play with, and you're going to be knocking back mana potions in order to get mana back, because you're burning through it with the life staff, obviously. So if we go ahead again and take some damage here, and then we drink the mana potion, we're going to get, obviously we're full mana, so don't really need it, but even with full mana, we can still drink it. We get a 2,128 heal, but it is impacted by the Revitalizing Beacon again, because Revitalizing Beacon is just all healing that comes into you. So we take a little bit more damage, cast the Beacon ability, and then we use a mana potion to get the Healthy Toast, and now it's 2,952. So yeah, Revitalizing Beacon, very, very strong, especially if you do anticipate like playing with your health pool as a resource in combat, which is what you should expect during the heavy armor. Now with the Warhammer, I would say this is definitely a build catered more towards PvP. In PvE, it's not really going to do a whole lot. You'll be able to keep some like skeletons or Angry Earth off of you when you're doing an expedition, but the Void Gauntlet is probably more what you want to lean into if you are interested in using this build in PvE, but I do think this is more of a PvP build, and in terms of the weapon mastery, we're actually rocking the same as what we would with the medium armor build. One thing that you guys may have a question on is why do we have Spirits United here in both builds? I didn't actually mention this in the medium armor build. Spirits United is another buff on your hotbar down here, so we've got 2 buffs on ourselves right now. And if we look at the tooltip of Light's Embrace, it says heal for 80% weapon damage plus 30% more for each buff on that target, and this is a buff on the target, which is me, so it just increases the health of your Light's Embrace by 30% more for you or a party member, so that's why Spirits United is down there. Again, we're always running Sacred Ground because Sacred Ground's really, really good. We're using Beacon because we want the Revitalizing Beacon perk, and then we're taking Light's Embrace over Orb of Protection because Light's Embrace is a super short cooldown. It's like every like 3.5 seconds there for a low amount of mana and a high amount of health. So it's just a constant way, on top of being able to drink health potions to get health back, drink mana potions to get health back, and then you can also just keep doing Light's Embraces every like 3.5 seconds as well. And you're just so hard to kill in this build, combined with the Warhammer, which our weapon mastery for looks a bit like this. It's basically all on the Crowd Crusher side of things. We're just looking to CC the enemy, keep them off us, and make it very frustrating for them to kill us. So it's a different take on the Rapier side of things. It's more a build where instead of looking to take no damage, you're looking to take all the damage, but also provide like a really annoying amount of CC and slow the enemy while you're doing it. So the light armor, the heavy armor, more for PvP with like sort of different playstyles, and then the in-between spot, as I mentioned, is the medium armor, which I think works in both PvE and PvP. And now, of course, you can take any build and make it work in any variation. You can do Void Gauntlet with the light armor. You can do Warhammer with the medium armor. You know, you can interchange various parts of this build, but I just wanted to outline like 3 different playstyles, the perks required, why we would use the weapons with those, and, you know, hopefully explain my thought process when it comes to making builds for healing. So, yeah, if you guys have any other build recommendations, anything that you find works for you in particular, let me know. If you want any further deep dives into like why we're using particular gems in the gear or anything else that I didn't cover in this video, let me know in the comments down below. But I just, you know, I'm at 35 minutes in the recording now, so hopefully I can edit this down a little bit. But yeah, hope you guys found this video useful. As always, if you do, make sure to go ahead and click the like button, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.